Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Billy, call 911 and tell them.
That's probably a couple $1 million floating away right there. I can't imagine what it must feel like to stand there and watch your home float off into the ocean like that. I hope there wasn't anyone in there, but I would say that the odds are they wouldn't be yelling to call 911 simply over a house getting destroyed, so there was likely people in that house getting swept out to sea.
See the wire under the blue shirt.
Like one. Thank you to
the other. We have a beautiful
Reaching, talking, and looking down like something is wrong.
beautiful planet. It's the most beautiful planet in the whole solar system.
Chamatoff and Greg Johnson. Obviously, they're
Again,
doing
looking
other
down.
things. Andrew Foystel is there. Why don't you pass the microphone to him?
So we don't need to
Look
bring
at
in
his
special
posture.
blankies.
He has that machine around him and he's stuck.
Trinkets with you.
Here's where they do a group backflip and the guy in blue gets stuck upside down. This then causes the guy in red to press an invisible button to the right-hand side of the room. You can then hear the machine working and attempting to untangle him.
That's certainly not as graceful.
I gotta
Keep
say,
your eyes on the guy in
you're
red.
Having some fun up there. You're not going to the Olympics with that. Keep the.
Watch. Listen as he presses the button. You can hear the machine.
Yeah, Miles.
Watch the replay and see the wire under the blue shirt.
Like one. Thank you to.
It's being pulled by the machine.
Yeah, Miles, and I'll send you one of these bracelets.
Untangling Wire.
Thank you to all of you very much. Appreciate your time. I know you got a busy.
He's completely stuck.
Spacewalk ahead, and thanks to all of you for your time.
Yeah, Miles, and I'll send you one of these bracelets.
I'm convinced that absolutely looked like he was stuck on wires. He even reaches back to pull his shirt down to try to hide it. I think NASA needs to stop doing these live events and start pre-recording everything, or they're not going to be able to convince anybody of anything before long. It's funny how they seem to have forgotten the fact that people overanalyze the crap out of everything they put online, yet they keep making the same mistakes and giving us more and more evidence that they're attempting to deceive us.
Do you see this man right here? He just said something that might blow up the internet. Please listen carefully.
I don't like what I saw with the police. They're thugs. That's wrong, quite right. But for me, this was politicized by Starmer. He talked about supporting, quite rightly, before anybody jumps in, mosques and Muslims. But he's now saying to anybody who disagrees with the migration situation, who feels, as a caller I had from Wales, an NHS nurse earlier, who said, if I go and protest now, I'm going to be called far right. If the police are able to be that strong, Richard, if they're able to be filmed arresting people at 6 o'clock and we can get them into prison within a day, despite the fact that apparently there weren't any spaces, why the bloody hell don't we do that across the board for knife crime, for drug dealers, and for everybody? That's what I want to know.
Now, this is Jeremy Kyle, and I couldn't agree more with him. I've been asking myself the same thing lately. How come our prisons are full, but people are getting imprisoned within the same day? As you know, guys, the UK is in a little bit of a mess right now, and the way that our UK government has been dealing with it ain't been the best. You know, I think protesting is a great thing if it's done peaceful, but people are scared to go out and protest now because they're fearing for their life, and not only that, they're fearing for the fact that they'll get called far right. Now hear me out, for everything recently that our government's put in place, why haven't they done this for knife crime? But I'll let you make that decision. Let us know in the comment section and make the rest of your life the best of your life.
First of all, I don't think anyone should be worried about being called far right. The way someone else views you, especially if that view is incorrect, has no bearings on who you actually are. Just don't worry about it. I don't. But in regards to the citizens being jailed over protests and not the actual criminals, the criminals hide from the cops. These are law-abiding citizens that are being detained. They don't run from the cops. They're an easier target. That's why we're seeing so many videos of people being arrested in the UK. And if you look, you'll notice that most of the victims in these videos are in shock that the situation's even taken place. But they are courteous and compliant with the police. It makes perfect sense why the cops are targeting them instead of someone that would require effort to catch. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and you like this kind of content, I post a new one just like it every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. It'd be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back tomorrow to join me. Also, don't forget to check out the latest episode of the podcast. The link is in the description.
Hi and welcome to my point of view. Okay, have you heard about how the Church of England have now decided that we aren't able to call our churches churches? We have to call them a community of people. I'm so sorry. I find that quite offensive. As a Catholic person myself, yeah, I might not go to church every Sunday. However, as a Catholic person who was brought up in the Catholic Church, who went to a school that was run by nuns, and I still have my beliefs. I'm not a practicing Christian by any means. However, I still have my faith and I still have my beliefs. So for the church to say that we're not allowed to call it a church anymore because we don't want to offend people is absolutely bizarre. I just don't get it. I really do not get it. Can you imagine the Muslims being told that they can't call their mosque a mosque? Can you imagine the uproar that would actually happen? And I don't care what religion you are. You have your faith and you should be respected enough to have that faith. And you should not be dictated to ensure that other religions don't get offended by your own. I'm sorry, it should not happen. The church should be staying out of politics. It should be. And they've brought themselves into this political ideology that the rest of the world, the rest of the population, the rest of religions should never, ever, ever be upset and hurt by what we Catholics do, what we white people do, what any other nationality, no, whatever faith you are, that's not their own. You should never ever upset them, but we can be upset.
I want to be careful here. I'm curious what people's thoughts are on this one. There's clearly an attack on Christianity happening right now, and it seems like the Catholic Church is assisting in the attack, which makes zero sense. It almost seems like the Catholic Church has been taken over by political ideology to the point that they're no longer taking God's will into account when they come out with some of these new directives. The Catholic Church seems like it's been polluted as far as I can see. I know a good deal of our audience is actually Catholic. What are your guys' thoughts on this? And what are your justifications for continuing to follow in the Catholic faith when they're clearly putting out ideas that directly conflict with the teachings in the Bible? I am not trying to speak ill of someone else's beliefs. I'm just genuinely interested in the thought process of someone who's still hanging on to Catholicism after all the shady things we've been seeing from them over recent years.
Have you seen that video where that woman says that her mom's like knocking at the door, but it's like, open the door for mommy, and then she's like, my mom would never talk to me like that, and then it does this weird demon growl thing at the end. Let me show you guys real quick.
Come out. Bella, are you there, honey? Open the door for mommy. Bella. Come out. Bella.
Do I think this is a mimic? That's what everybody keeps saying. No. If this is for real, That's not a mimic. That's something so much worse. So much worse. There's no way I would open that door. And this video scared me. Not gonna lie. It scared me. Have you seen it? Who do you think it is? What do you think it is? What would you do? I'm not opening that door.
I've worked maintenance in many different apartment complexes, and I'm very familiar with that type of door and doorknob. If that was genuinely someone on the other side of that door wanting in, they could easily just force that door open. I don't care if her mom only weighed about 115 pounds, she would still be able to push that door in. Those cheap little door handles just simply don't hold up to even the lightest bit of abuse. But because of that, and the fact that this girl was just calmly sitting in her room recording the door and not trying to block the door with anything or yell for help, to me, this one just screams, I'm trying to get views on TikTok.
Laser pointer. How powerful, blue, and beautiful. The most important thing is that it can be used to pop balloons, which I am about to do. So, here we go. Yellow balloon, green balloon, boom. Blue balloon, boom. Nibu. And why? Because in human terms, they are of the same color. But from a physics standpoint, they are of the same wavelength. And the blue balloon doesn't absorb the beam's energy, it scatters it. Actually, the same thing happens too with transparent objects. Through a transparent sphere, a beam passes easily, but a black one will surely burst. The beam that originates from this pointer isn't powerful enough. At most, it can pop balloons. But there are lasers that are called combat lasers.
I'm certain that you all know what that was in reference to, and we've all heard the theories about the lasers causing the fires in Hawaii, and how the celebrities who had blue roofs didn't get their properties destroyed because the lasers won't catch a blue roof on fire. Now, personally, I've seen enough evidence already to make that conspiracy sound like it's grounded in reality, but this is the first actual video that I've seen that shows definitively that the blue lasers will not interfere with a blue object. Take that same concept and then scale it up to a military-sized laser, and the pieces fit so perfectly in place you almost can't deny it.
You really believe what they tell you? Have you heard of the Orphan Trains? It was a covert operation to repopulate and reshape the American Midwest. This is as dark and scary as it sounds. Between 1854 and 1929, the United States was experiencing massive waves of immigration that was flooding into urban areas. There was a need to spread the population more evenly across the country, not only to alleviate the overcrowded cities, but also to exert control over areas in America. So, the U.S. government came up with a plan. They took over 250,000 orphaned and homeless children from New York City and other urban areas, placed them on trains, and sent them to rural towns across America. This plan was sold to the public as giving these children a fresh start, but the reality was much darker and more complex. Many of these children simply vanished. Over 100,000 children disappeared as soon as they stepped onto those trains. Was this just a result of poor record keeping, or is there a more sinister story behind these missing children?
I've been hearing this theory for a while now, and I honestly think that the idea he proposed of poor record keeping is likely the most reasonable explanation here. This theory would make sense if it were just simply the idea of them removing children from their homes and moving them around the country for some nefarious purpose that we need to uncover. But it starts getting into infant cloning and stuff, which I just can't make sense out of the idea that we potentially had the ability to clone back in 1854. I've seen absolutely nothing that would indicate to me that we had that kind of advanced technology that long ago. I don't even think we have that exact technology that they're describing in that theory today. I know we have the ability to make clones, but I don't think we have the ability to do it at such a large scale like what would have been necessary to make this theory work.
You guys want to hear something terrifying? The Prophecy of the Pope. This book was found in the Vatican archives in the 1500s, and it was authored by, his name was Malachi of Armagh, but this book has 111 cryptic phrases. Basically, it predicted every single pope from in 1143 all the way to our current pope, Pope Francis.
No way.
But the scary thing is, after Pope Francis, the last one, it just says in Judgment Day.
Oh gosh.
It literally ends after Pope Francis?
Yes. The creepiest thing that I saw inside St. Paul's Basilica, like bordering the whole inner sanctuary, is every single pope, like a picture of every single pope. But what's weird is that there's only a certain amount of markers to where you could put a picture. One left after Pope Pope Francis. They have always said that once that last slot is filled, it will be the end of the world. What he predicted and the time it took to go from the first Pope that he wrote about to the second halfway mark Pope was 422 years. And he's saying from the middle one to the end, another 422 years will be the end of the world. And if you do 422 years from the middle Pope, which was 1585, that year is 2027.
Dang!
Pope John the 23rd, he said that the end of the world would happen 2,000 years plus Christ's life. So that adds up to 2027 as well.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think the world is going to come to an end in 2027. But when you have about 20 different prophecies being fulfilled and about 20 different end times predictors all pointing to the end of the 2020s as the last days, it starts to get a little difficult to ignore. The one thing I keep in mind when I hear these predictions is that they are all based off Scripture to an extent. But Scripture says plainly that no man will know the date of the last day. So any day that you hear predicted as the last, in my mind, you can write that day off as being an option because nobody knows. They're all just making an educated guess, and the Bible literally tells us that every man will get it wrong.
2024 is getting absolutely crazy. After 15,000 cases of Mpox, all the governments of the world are starting to get scared. TikTok, Facebook, this is just mainstream news. After their first case in Sweden, now the UK preparing for this emergency. You know what's happening in the UK, right?
Rapid spread of a lethal version of Mpox in Africa and now to Europe is causing increasing alarm. The World Health Organization has declared it a public health emergency of international concern, calling for urgent action to bring it under control. Mpox, previously known as monkeypox, causes fever, rash, lesions, severe headaches and fatigue. Some people have difficulty breathing or swallowing, and there is a risk of life-threatening sepsis.
And we've literally had hundreds of earthquakes in California the last few weeks, counting big ones and small ones. I mean, it's every freaking day over there. Do you remember about the whole San Andreas fault thing? I'm telling you guys, it's just back to back, and people are literally saying it sounds like explosions. Did you also know volcanoes are going off all over the freaking world right now? Yo, this is crazy. They're now starting to evacuate from this region. And of course, we had all the fire in Greece. But you know, we could really say all over the world. And we have this monster storm and hurricane chilling in the Atlantic Ocean as the water gets warmer. I don't think it'll hit, but if it does, we're in trouble. Anyway, that's all the doomsday I got so far. What did I miss?
We're just starting to get trickling reports of this Mpox stuff, and it's feeling an awful lot like the beginning stages of the COVID pandemic. I'm not going to make any predictions as to where I think this is going to go, but I will say anytime the World Health Organization comes out with a new directive, your alarm bells should be going off. They overplayed their hand during COVID and showed the world that they're just another political organization who makes determinations based on the bottom dollar instead of what's best for public health. I read everything they put out with a suspicious eye.
Listen to this strange thunder.
What is that? I'm a 7th generation Floridian, and I have never heard thunder like that.
Now listen to this. Y'all thinking what I'm thinking? When Professor Rakia shared that video of the thunder, I couldn't help but think about the sounds of a frozen lake. Strange.
I like this idea. It's actually a fun explanation for that weird sound if you believe in a flat earth. I don't believe in a flat earth, so I can't help but wonder, if that's the cause of the sound, why don't we hear it all the time? The dome is supposedly always overhead, so it wouldn't just be a one-off video that detects the sound of the dome. Also, if that sound were coming from the dome, and based on her location of being literally anywhere other than the edges of the flat earth, she'd be pretty far below the dome. Wouldn't we have gotten thousands of videos of that sound? It would have reached everywhere. We would have all heard it. If that sound came from the dome and made it all the way to her backyard in Florida, I can't help but assume that we would have heard that all over the United States at least, if not all over the world. I don't think this came from the dome. If I had to guess, I'd say she's likely hearing some local construction noise of some kind.
Let's debunk the 1972 blue marble. Neil deGrasse Tyson says,
Do you realize if you took Earth with all of its mountains, valleys, and hills and shrunk it down to the size of a cue ball, it would be smoother than any cue ball ever machined.
And look at this topography. This mountain alone would be about 100 miles tall. And that's just the beginning. So this is the 1972 blue marble, the only image that NASA has of this trip on their website, and here's why. This is another photo supposedly taken on the way to the moon. Now notice this big fat Terminator line here. This is the day that they set off for the moon. And notice in our solar system, the sun and the moon are pretty well aligned. If you know anything about orbital trajectory, this is how they do it. They'll leave Earth, go around, and then set their trajectory for the moon, so wherever the sun is, they'll be heading that same direction. They're not going to change their trajectory until they get to the moon. So, if they leave Earth and they're heading toward the sun the entire 3-day trip, then every time they look back at Earth, they're going to see the same light on that face of the Earth as the Earth would turn in the sunlight. So they would never experience a Terminator line in that 3-day trip toward the sun, toward the source of light, looking back behind you. The only way you would see this is if, when you got to the moon, you rode on the moon for like 4 days until it got around to the position where you would see a Terminator line on Earth. NASA took this off of their website. This is not on nasa.gov anymore. It's in the archives. You have to dig to find this one because they released all the photos and then were like, whoops, we didn't think about orbital mechanics here.
So one of two things happened. They either didn't go to the moon and had to fake that photo of the Earth to offer up as proof of the mission, or they did go but faked that photo to give us a false impression of what our world actually looks like. I'm of the belief that we never went in the first place, and that's the explanation for the fake photos. They couldn't take any because they weren't where they said they were, and so they had no choice but to fake it. But that's just my opinion.
Dr. Steven Greer got together a group of former military officers, former nuclear scientists, rocket scientists, and the men that actually had the code to activate nukes.
Approached us at very high speed, stopped directly overhead, and sent down a concentrated beam at our feet.
They came in on CNN Live, and they all came up and testified that these UFOs showed up in broad daylight while they were at their missile silos. They call them flights. These are nuclear flights, way out in the middle of nowhere, broad daylight, and they actually began to hack in and deactivate the nukes in broad daylight.
These objects have been tracked since the early 1950s, if not earlier, traveling up to 7,000 miles per hour. Missiles have been tampered with here and in the former Soviet Union.
They even had procedures that they would talk about that they had to do when one showed up, how they would have to go in and one officer would stay outside and report back to base exactly what he sees and what's going on. And they started showing up at flights all over the world.
UFOs came over, shone a beam down on the weapons storage area where nukes were stored. To me, it's pretty clear. This is just, we're shining a light on this. We're pointing it out. What are you people doing with nuclear weapons?
And so I think they were sending a message to us saying, hey, you guys are not going to split the atom on this planet again. You're not going to destroy this planet. We're letting you know that we have the power to shut this down, and we need this planet for whatever reason, whatever agenda they have, but they're not going to allow us to destroy ourselves.
The moment that he said Dr. Greer, my alarm bells started going off, because I'm convinced that man is a government plant put in place to sow disinformation into the UFO conversation. But once he said this panel was taking place on CNN, I knew right then that this was all garbage. CNN is so obviously the worst of the worst when it comes to being a propagandized arm of the government. If they're putting out information on anything, it's because the federal government wants that information out there. Everybody needs to go watch this and take notes on what they say so they know what direction to not dig in when we're doing our research.
Remember this guy? The Blob anomaly coming from Antarctica that's the size of Texas? I wondered, which region of Antarctica did it come from in relation to the moon map? And from right here, the tip of South Africa. And if the warming land is going through cycles, like the clock in Prague depicts, then that is the exact region that would be melting. People were saying the Blob, it's the Leviathan. And look at this cool icy Leviathan I found. Some were saying they released the Kraken. We all theorized that Ice Ages was the cover-up for the cycle that this map goes through. And it's funny that the most recent Ice Age we had was called the Quaternary, as we exist in our new quarter of inhabitable land. Whatever that blob was, it was creating 80-foot waves. Could it have been this thing? Could they be finding more than just mammoths in Antarctica's melting ice sheets? We already know they found this aquatic Quidditch ball with teeth under Antarctica's ice. And of course the terrifying Yeti crab. Some even say megalodons have been found in those regions. I don't claim to know what the blob is, but it just so happens to be in the correct region if ice were melting in Antarctica, exposing Titan-sized monsters. All I know is tales of these beasts have existed since the beginning of time as we know it. They were said to have reigned thousands of years ago and will reign again here on this intelligently designed cycling Earth.
I honestly, after what's it been, a couple of months since this all happened, I honestly don't think that that blob anomaly was anything other than just that, an anomaly. The only reason I say that is because it clearly showed on the radar that the thing was reaching the shores of South Africa. So it would only make sense that if it were some ancient giant creature that was released from under the ice, there'd be tons of video footage of it from when it reached the shoreline, which it did multiple times. Basically, every time we saw the anomaly pop up on the radar, it would reach the shoreline. I think with the lack of new information surrounding that radar blip and the lack of evidence for it being caused by literally anything, I can't really see it at this point other than anything but a glitch in their equipment.
If you or anybody you know live anywhere in this area, you need to watch this video because this is supposed to be a simulation of what the new Madrid fault line could do. So basically, the National Guard has been in Missouri holding multiple drills just in case an 8.4 magnitude earthquake hits the new Madrid line, which is crazy. I just showed you guys this photo in the intro, but this is the new simulation of what it could do. I'm actually in the red. This is terrifying. So the Missouri Department of Natural Resources now says that there's a 10% chance that the state will experience a magnitude 7 or higher earthquake in the next 50 years. They're saying that obviously an earthquake like that would be extremely catastrophic, but there's an even better chance that a major earthquake greater than 6 could cause massive damage too. And then they're saying that the estimate actually goes up to 25% that Missouri will see a quake that large in the next 30 years. Basically, all of this stuff has been going down for the past few days. There's actually simulation videos showing what the approximate damage could be across the United States, and the ocean would basically open up and then all of the middle of the US would be water. By the way, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this was all just a drill and this is a simulation about if an earthquake did happen, this would be the new Madrid fault line and it would be crazy, but we're all okay. This is all very new and I couldn't find that much information, but make sure you add me and come back tomorrow.
I live in the red as well. I actually went to a multi-day safety seminar for a previous employer that was all about this earthquake and the destruction they expected to cause. When this thing goes off, if it really does what they're expecting, it's going to hit so hard they expect some state lines are going to need to be remapped. There's supposed to be that much of a shift in the landscape near the actual fault line. Just make sure you have a plan on where to go and how to get there if you get caught up in this thing, because you aren't going to want to stay in these cities and stuff. It's going to be extremely dangerous. Busted gas lines, downed power lines, and hundreds of thousands of people all fighting for the last bits of food before the shelves run empty. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out www.barry-stepp.com if you'd like to order yourself a shirt or a hat and help me support the channel. I greatly appreciate anyone who's ordered anything off of there so far. Also, don't forget to post your photos of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But with all that out of the way, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow.